watching Goal Line Extended presented by Lacrosse Flash.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Goal Line Extended. Today is Tuesday, April 6th, and my name is Ryan Hulsebos. Thank you for joining us for our fifth show of GLE, April 6th. We were originally planning on the college draft going down later tonight, but if you missed that news, the PLL announced over the weekend that the college draft has been pushed back to April 26th, so that should give us plenty of time to preview that draft over the next few weeks and some time to make sure we get you all caught up on all the latest news and updates out of the PLO and all the big storylines coming out of college lacrosse ahead of the draft. Lacrosse Flash editor-in-chief Austin Owens will be joining me in a little bit to catch us up on everything that we need to know, and we'll discuss the entry draft of the Chaos, the only team that did not make any additions during the first round of the waiver period and the only team that we did not touch on and discuss last week following the entry draft. So we'll be circling back around and talking Chaos lacrosse. Today, Austin will be joining me very soon. And then following Austin will be Archer's defenseman Eli Gobrecht, the fourth overall selection of last year's entry draft, one of the staples on what was in 2020 and is now ahead of 2021, one of the best defensive units in the league. He'll be joining me at the end of the show to talk about his team's offseason and the upcoming 2021 season. But before all that, joining me right now, Lacrosse Flash writer and reporter Jordan Johnson to talk about an exciting weekend in college lacrosse. Some notable scores coming out of the ACC. As always, the Patriot League gave us two really good games between ranked teams. But first, Jordan, welcome to the show. How you doing, my guy?
How you doing, buddy? I'm doing great. Great weekend of college lacrosse. Great weekend overall. Let's get it, buddy.
Hey, let's start with that Thursday night game that we were treated to. The number one and number two teams in the country, Duke and North Carolina, squared off in Durham last Thursday night, and it did not disappoint at all. Duke was with a 12-11 overtime win over the Tar Heels. A game-winning goal by attackman Joe Robertson sealed it in OT, and Robertson did his damage in this one. 7 points on the evening, including 4 goals. The needed contributor in this game for the Blue Devils, as Mike Sowers was held to just 1 goal on 5 shots. Brennan O'Neill held to 2 goals on 10 shots. Dyson Williams and Owen Caputo each tallying 2 goals apiece on 17 combined shots. So struggling to find the back of the net was Duke. Granted, Colin Krieg was phenomenal in cage. 14 saves on 26 shots faced for North Carolina, was able to keep UNC in this one. But Mike Adler on the other end put in an even better performance himself. 17 saves on 28 shots faced, able to stay above that 60% save mark. And that's a result of 22 combined shots faced from Chris Gray and Tanner Cook alone. So the shots were flying in this one on both ends, but the goalies were able to keep the score at bay. Duke to remain as the number one team in the country according to Inside Lacrosse's rankings after what can be looked at as a big-time statement win. Now back-to-back one-goal wins over ACC foes Syracuse and North Carolina. They travel to Notre Dame to take on fourth-ranked Irish on Saturday, and UNC falls a single spot to number 3. They will host sixth-ranked Virginia on Saturday. Jordan, I just breezed through some stats there from the game, and just from that, kind of able to get a good idea of how this game went. Whole lot of shots, a lot of saves. We didn't see the goal total numbers that I think we were all expecting, but that can be reflected on those save numbers that we saw. But in terms of Duke separating themselves from the rest of the ACC and the rest of the country, were they able to do that with this one?
I think they were. Definitely one of those games where they beat that UNC and that team, as you mentioned, Michael Sowers and Brendan O'Neill had quiet games, which is exactly what you want to see, right? Not that you want to see the other guys step up, all right? Because as you get towards the tournament, you didn't want them to see a team that was reliant on Brendan O'Neill or a team that was reliant on Sowers for scoring. You wanted to see the other guys, Nakai Montgomery, Owen Caputo, Joe Robertson with the big game. That was a great game to watch from them, especially offensively, getting the other guys coming into the game. As we mentioned last week, I was wondering how Jake Nazo would hold up against UNC's face-off unit. He had a phenomenal game. He started to put himself up there in that conversation with some of the elite guys. Mind you, he's only a freshman, so you're going to see more of him, and it wouldn't be surprising me if in a few years we're talking about him the same way we're talking about guys like Kyle Gallagher right now. All right, T.D. Irwin, we know he's on a whole different level. But Jake Nazo has entered the conversation with some of the guys like an Ignacio, a Gallagher, a Charlie Leonard, a Justin Shockey. He's entered that conversation. He had a phenomenal game against Tucci. And, hey, Mike Adler's still in his head, man. Both of the goalies did, Krieg and Mike Adler. But the difference between Mike Adler in game one against Denver to now has been phenomenal. And he's going to be the difference in whether Duke wins the national title or not, because he's going to have one of those games again and again and again because of that ACC gauntlet. And then in the NCAA tournament with all these teams, all these good teams that we haven't seen playing out of conference, the Dukes and the Marylands of the world, they're going to get a tough team from day one in the tournament. So you're going to have guys like Mike Adler step up and have a big game. JT Giles Harris, even though he didn't get the number one matchup, which was smart on Duke's end, step up. So overall, I like this game from Duke as a team as a whole. It may not have been as fireworky, explosive as we thought, goal scoring wise. Obviously, it was a great game. It was the greatest game of the year so far. And it was scrappy. And as you know, I love seeing a scrap fest, man.
Oh yeah,
So
those are the games that we like to see. Those are the games that we like to see. And you brought up Adler. Adler, first game was benched and now comes into this one and really was the difference, as you were saying. For North Carolina, Chris Gray, Nicky Solomon, and Justin Anderson each tallied 2 goals and an assist, and Tanner Cook notched 2 goals on the evening. The Tar Heels will look to get back to their winning ways this weekend as they host Virginia. And the other big ACC game we had this weekend came from Duke's next opponent, Notre Dame, with a big win over Syracuse. 18-11 was the final. For Notre Dame, Pat Cavanaugh continues his strong 2021 sophomore campaign with probably his best game of the season. 4 goals and 5 assists on the afternoon. Will York, Griffin Westland also added 4 goals each, but the story was more about the lopsided face-off battle more than anything. Kyle Gallagher, Charles Leonard, you brought up both of their names before, winning a combined 23 of 32 face-offs. Leonard winning 8 of 10 himself. Notre Dame now up to number 4 in Inside Lacrosse's ranking, sitting at 5-1. Syracuse drops their 3rd of the season and 2nd in a row. Granted, both to ACC teams. We bring up that ACC gauntlet, but they sit at 4-3. Looking at this game and then their upcoming meeting with Duke, what does Notre Dame need to carry into this one to pull off the quote-unquote upset this weekend over the top-ranked Blue Devils?
Pat Cavanaugh needs to continue to be himself, right? Look, coming against Virginia, and he wasn't great. Virginia had a game plan to shut him out. I think Duke is going to take that exact formula and try to run with that. But look, Pat Cavanaugh is special, man. And just like the other Cavanaugh brothers, he's going to be able to do great things. Now, against Duke's defense, I don't know, man. But I love how Will York has come along in these past couple games, especially in ACC play, to assert himself, right? And now he's got to go up against the big boys. He's probably going to get the JT matchup because I don't see how you put him on Kavanaugh necessarily. So he's probably going to get that matchup. And I'm really excited to see how he gets that. He's another D2 or D3 guy. Excuse me. I know I'm botching this, which one it is, but another guy playing up like Charlie Bertrand, who had a great start to the year, but is now kind of falling off. Let's see with Will York if he can not have that same sort of fall off as Charlie Bertrand's had. With all respect to Charlie Bertrand, because he's still a good player in its own right. But now it's a next step up. Same thing with the Syracuse defender who had to guard Michael Sowers, who actually played up to his competition well. But still, you could see it wasn't the greatest of matchups, and he had to adjust. I think Will York's going to have to do the same thing on the offensive end, but we'll see.
Syracuse is looking ahead to a Thursday night matchup with Albany this week. Albany coming off a 17-6 win over UMass Lowell this past weekend in their first game officially without Tehoka Nanticoke. What does Syracuse need to do to get back to their winning ways? Because with the way the rest of the ACC is playing, they're going to need to get these out-of-conference wins, and it starts here against Albany.
Well, you mentioned that Albany game. Even without Tehoka Nanticoke, that Albany offense looks scary. So Syracuse is going to have to figure it out on defense real quick. Look, offensively, we know what they are, right? You know that ball is going to be in Owen Hills' stick on every possession. You know that about the midfield. Now it's about the poles, man, because them Albany attackmen, they are something serious. Jacob Patterson is a problem, man, and he's going to be your main focus, man. So I think they'll beat Albany, but I think I think it'll be closer than a lot of people think. A lot of people might write this off as no Toyota and Nanticoke, they're going to get smacked. Excuse my name. Excuse me. Scott Moore is going to have that Albany team ready, man, and they better watch out because coming into the beginning of the year, that was a game that I circled on my calendar that was like, watch out. I thought Syracuse might have been undefeated by this time, but even still, Albany's going to play spoiler. I don't think they're going to win, but I think they'll give them 3 to 4 quarters of a hard-nosed game. Might go to overtime, sneaky overtime game. Maybe Owen Hiltz won in overtime, and we all get shot. I don't know. Let me not go to prediction, but watch out for Albany.
Hopefully to give Syracuse a run for their money here in this one on Thursday night. Number 6 ranked Virginia was also in action this past weekend. They got a week off from their ACC rivals, but still had a test on their hands. They traveled to take on number 17 ranked Richmond, and it was able to escape unscathed with an 18-10 victory behind 4 goals and 3 assists from Connor Schellenberger, 3 goals and 3 assists from Matt Moore, and a hat trick from Peyton Cormier. They led the way for the Cavaliers as they improve to 8-2 on the season and look ahead to a very important game this weekend with North Carolina, as Virginia currently sits at 1-2 in conference play. Both of their 2 losses coming in conference. Jordan, we saw these 2 teams match up last month. North Carolina able to grab that one on the road, 16-13. What does Virginia need to do this time? They're going on the road to change their fortune and get back up to 500 in conference play.
They need to pick up that momentum that they had in the second half of that first game. If they can get it rolling on offense, you just listed the guys that went off against Richmond. They're going to have to bring that same thing. Look, we talk about this every week. We know what Virginia is on paper. It's always with them. Can they get it going early, right? Against UNC the first time. They did not. And UNC is a team with their guys, with Nicky Solomon, Chris Gray, Tanner Cook. If you don't score on their defense early, they're going to cook you. That's what happened in the first half of that game, right? Excuse me. P.D. LaSalle's got to get it going. Schellenberger's got to get it going early. I wouldn't mind you putting the ball in Schellenberger's stick earlier than maybe Doc Sakin or Matt Moore, because if you have those guys around late, sort of like Doc's against Notre Dame, they got it to him early, went to the other guys, then Doc comes back around, gets that sick goal at the end to win it. Might want to think about employing that strategy again. Maybe same thing with Matt Moore, because if you can get Schellenberger as a threat early on, it's almost not that they forget, but he just becomes that much more of a weapon late in the game, because you're almost going to be tempted to slide to Schellenberger, and then it's like, oh, you got Cormier in the crease there, you got Doc Sakin, you got Matt Moore, oh yeah, and you got the big guy Charlie Bertrand, who's pretty good, by the way. So
the ACC giving us some great games this weekend. So did the Big Ten. Number 3 Maryland making easy work of Penn State. The Terps got the 17-10 win to improve to 7-0. Jared Bernhardt scored 5 goals and added 3 assists in the meantime, breaking Maryland's program record for goals in a career in the process. He now has 28 goals and 15 assists to his name on the season over 7 games. Logan Wisnauskas also added 4 goals along with a hat trick from Daniel Maltz. For Penn State, Mac O'Keefe posted a hat trick for himself. But Maryland continues to roll, now up to number 2 in the country, heading to Michigan to take on the Wolverines this weekend. Penn State will host Rutgers, who was able to hold off Ohio State over the weekend. 10-9 was your final. The Scarlet Knights, fueled by 3 goals and assists from Ryan Charlambides. Colin Kirst saved 15 of 24 shots faced, and Rutgers improves to 5-2 on the year. Those only 2 losses coming to Maryland, and we're now seeing that Big Ten shape itself out. We know Maryland is a clear-cut number 1, but we weren't too sure who really stood at number 2. After this win, although not pretty, but this win along with the 10-point margin from back in February, I think it's safe to say that Rutgers is that number 2, followed by the rest of the pack, and we'll wait and see how they fall. But a big win from Rutgers. But what might be most surprising after this game is that Ohio State moves up 2 spots to number 14 in this Inside Lacrosse Division I rankings. Obviously, a better outcome, or a better outing, I should say, than their first time around with Rutgers when they surrendered 22 goals. But Jordan, a loss to a conference rival. Yeah, it was better than the last one, and they could have very well won this game, but they didn't. Does that justify them moving up in these rankings?
It does not. And honestly, I think this is a product of not having an Ivy League team in there because a Harvard or Brown would have been there. Yale would have been in the top five. Yeah, man. Ohio State, look, they pulled it out. I'm sorry, they didn't look great. And look, they hung in there with Rutgers. They played way better than they did the first time. But look, this is something on the Big Ten. There's like as you mentioned, there's Maryland, and then there's everybody else. I mean, who do you think the third best team is? It's honestly, you have to say Ohio State now by default, but look at where Hopkins is. And I thought Hopkins was everyone. I thought Hopkins was going to be the second best team. All right. You got Maryland, you got Rutgers, and then you can take your pick between Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, Hopkins, right? And I think it's honestly the only way I can justify having a 4-loss team being that high is you're not having an Ivy League. And that's with all due respect to Ohio State, because they're going to give whoever they end up playing in the Big Ten tournament, it might be Maryland and Ohio State in that championship game. They could very well beat Rutgers in the tournament if they so play them. So, look, Ohio State's good. They're not great. They're a 4-loss team because they've had that Big Ten gauntlet, right? Had this been a normal year, having them 4 losses, depending on how they looked, I could see them in the top 20, but to have them in the top 15, no. Just no.
Ohio State definitely with a chance there to play Maryland, as you're saying. Big Ten tournament this year. All 6 teams will make it. The top 2 will get a bye. So we're thinking that's going to be Maryland at least as the 1 seed. We're imagining Rutgers as the 2. So if Ohio State can stay as that 3 seed and get out of that first knockout round, then beat Rutgers, they would be lined up to then play Maryland if Maryland was to win. But the third Big Ten game we had last weekend was between those other 2 teams in the Big Ten. Michigan beating Johns Hopkins 13-10. Some might call this an upset, as you might be in that you had Johns Hopkins early in the year at number 2, but we're not calling this an upset. Johns Hopkins has not been playing very well this season, as we both have just mentioned. But the Blue Jays dropped to 2-5, while Michigan improves to 2-5. They both sit right there with Penn State at the bottom of the conference. And like I said, reality is all 6 teams make the tournament. So top 2 get a bye. We should expect these 3 teams, along with Ohio State, to battle for that opportunity to play, hopefully, Rutgers, shorter straw, going to the one that has to play Maryland.
Yeah.
But looking ahead to that likelihood, we're paying close attention to this bottom group in the conference, and Johns Hopkins continuing to not look good. What do you need to see out of them here over the last few weeks to have any confidence in them going forward into this Big Ten tournament?
I need to see them play better defense, honestly. I mean, look, I'm not going to get into that Joey Epstein article that was in the Sun. Like, I know if those who follow me loyally want me to have my take on that, nope, I'm staying out of that. That's between Millman, Epstein, whoever wrote that article. Stay out of that. Connor DeSimone at attack. I love that. Having Cole Williams come out of the midfield. I love that. I think it's just a matter of execution on the offensive end. But defensively, Jamison Kessler is one of the best coordinators in the game of lacrosse, I believe. And unfortunately, look, they're falling victim to not having enough that practice time together, not being on point necessarily. The slides coming in late. It's the little things. And it's not even that they have a terrible defense. It's just execution-wise, man. And as we get later in the season, especially as we talked about earlier, something with the teams in the top 5, it's the little things, man. It's the technical stuff. Are you hustling to the sideline on a ground ball? Are you getting in and out? Are you getting transition game? Because look, we know Hopkins can win games when that transition's on point. Look at the first game against Penn State. Look at the Michigan game in Ann Arbor. When they get that transition rolling, that's going to be their key. When they can play fast on offense, get faster, get off of defense, go straight to playing offense in that transition game. That's how they're going to win games. And unfortunately, it's hard to do that when your guys, frankly, just haven't played a lot of lacrosse together and haven't played a lot of winning lacrosse together, unfortunately. So they're going to have to dig deep. If they're going to have to show me that they can be competitive. I think they'll give Maryland a run for their money at Homewood just on the pure emotions of that game. And I think they'll get up for that game. And in the Big Ten tournament, look, if they go into that Big Ten tournament hot, could they win a game or two? Absolutely. But I could say the same thing about Michigan. I could say the same thing about Penn State. I just talked about Ohio State potentially doing that. Whoever comes into that Big Ten tournament hot is who's going to give Maryland and Rutgers for a run for their money, right?
Mhm.
So if Hopkins can get some sort of momentum going in, that's the way that they play spoiler to everyone else.
Michigan will head to Maryland next weekend, and Johns Hopkins will head to Ohio State, coming off 3 straight losses. We'll be talking about all the Big Ten action going down this weekend on Friday, so make sure to tune in then. But definitely trying to get hot here before that Big Ten tournament will bode well, I believe, for these other 4 teams at the bottom of the conference going into the tournament. Number 5, Denver, continues to roll on and improves to 8-2 on the season after a 16-6 win over Marquette. TD Erland was questionable for this game, but he did play in his second game for the Pios, was phenomenal again, winning 11 of 12 at the stripe, and Alex Stathakis backed up his performance from last weekend, 7 of 12 to complement TD, and then goals came from all over. JJ Shilstrop and Jack Hanna each with a hat trick. Ted Sullivan scored 2 goals, and Ethan Walker and Jackson Morrow a goal and 2 assists for each of them. Denver starting to get real hot here at the right time ahead of their game this weekend with Villanova, and then a trip to Georgetown for a rematch with the 10th-ranked Hoyas.
Don't sleep on Villanova. This is ultimate trap game, right? We've been talking about this for a couple weeks now. Denver and Georgetown and D.C. But do not sleep on Villanova, a team that's starting to get hot themselves. I don't think I need to say much else about that. Denver is obviously going to be a heavy favorite, but look, Denver, wake up, get your business done. Don't sleep on Villanova because this is your trap game. Take care of business and go into DC with the biggest game of your season to date. That's all I need to say.
I like that. Short and sweet. The Patriot League also treated us to an exciting weekend with 2 top 20 matchups. Lehigh and Loyola, the 2 that came out with wins over the military academies. Lehigh, an exciting 13-12 win over Army behind 4 goals from Cole Kurse and 3 goals and assists from Christian Mule. John Sidorsky scored 2 goals and added 4 assists for Lehigh as well. Mike Sisselberger at the faceoff dot, winning 23 of 27 faceoffs with 14 ground balls, seemed to be the glaring difference in this one for Lehigh. And then Brendan Nickturn for Army continuing to play really well. He scored 5 goals and added 2 assists in the loss. And another Patriot League action we were watching closely was Loyola's 14-10 win over Navy. Loyola up and down as of late. They put up 24 goals against Bucknell a few weeks ago, got blanked for 6 the following week, and then this past week they got a huge conference win over another ranked team. Bailey Savia won 19 of 28 faceoffs to lead the way. Loyola now up to number 13 on Inside Lacrosse's rankings. They welcome Army this weekend to Baltimore after they fall a few spots to number 11, and number 19 Navy, who falls to number 19, will head to Lehigh to take on the top team in the Patriot League, who now sits at number 7 in the nation. So these teams just kind of flipping out who they're gonna play. Jordan, Lehigh sneaks away with a win. Loyola a little more in control. Takeaways from this weekend here in Patriot League action.
Takeaways: Lehigh's a top 5 team. They beat Army. They looked very convincing. I think I've heard a couple guys say if Lehigh gets in a game against Maryland, they could give them a run for their money in the tournament. I agree with that. Loyola is what it is. They have their potential is through the ceiling, but they haven't played up to it. And honestly, I think that Navy only lost that game because they're still working their way back from their pause with COVID. Spencer Rees is one of the most underrated goalies this year. Unfortunately, we just haven't seen a lot of them. And Navy could probably win that Patriot League, to be honest with you, or at least give Lehigh a run for their money. And I think there's Lehigh, Navy 1 and 3. Loyola's 2, and Loyola would be 1, but they're just so up and down. You get, as you mentioned, you get one great week out of them, then they lay an egg the next week. They sweep by Navy this weekend. I don't know what kind of team Loyola is going to be. At their best, they are a top 5 team in the country, I believe. But at their worst, you've seen it. You get what you get against Towson.
Some other results from the weekend. Number 10, Georgetown keeps rolling 20-7 the final behind 5 goals and 2 assists from Jake Carraway. Graham Bundy also added 6 goals for Georgetown. Drexel upsets number 19 UMass 12-11. UMass falls out of the top 20 after the loss. And one that I know you're going to be happy about hearing, Jordan, UMBC defeating Vermont over the weekend 10-8. They are now up to number 16 and set to head to Albany this coming Sunday. Jordan, we'll get a chance to see Albany in action on Thursday, as we said before, against Syracuse. Hopefully Syracuse can beat them up a little bit, but how confident are you in UMBC this weekend to get this win over Albany and hopefully start moving up these rankings?
I'm very confident. Look, as I mentioned on Twitter this past weekend, they play the most scrappy ball ever. All right? They play defense and transition. They get the long poles involved. The short stick D middies. My guy Keith Dukes scored a goal in transition as a short stick D midi, man. They're gonna give Albany a run for their money on defense. Offensively, now it's just a matter you got to put together. You got to put it together, and I think you need to put. Honestly, I don't want to take any shots at anybody. I think the ball belongs in Ryan Frawley's stick more, for say. No offense to the other guys. Kelly's going to get his points. Dupuis coming along this year, and that kid, not number 9, he's still on his head. Linger. And if he can have a game like that against Albany, and if they can shut out Jacob Patterson, I think maybe you give him the Ethan Robinson matchup. Maybe you play him at close D. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a coach, but that kid Ethan Robinson, man, he's a baller as a freshman, man. It's gonna be, like I said, UMBC. They need to make it their type of game, right? They need to make it a scrap fest, because if this thing becomes a scoring fest, Albany's going to put up their goals, and UMBC needs to keep up with that. But if UMBC can play their sort of scrap fest, grimy, get the ground ball scrums, I feel confident in them. I honestly do, regardless of whether Albany beats Syracuse or not, because I think Syracuse is going to give Albany a run for their money physically. And that's going to be a tough turnaround from, I believe, a Thursday game to a Sunday. I'm very confident in this UMBC team, who's going to be getting a lot more guys back coming off their COVID issues too. So I feel very confident, man.
There we go, getting guys back. Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern, Albany will be traveling to UMBC, but definitely getting guys back. That should help in hopefully getting that win there. Jordan, I want to thank you for joining me, my man. For everyone watching or listening, make sure to check out Jordan on social media at Jordan_John5. And GLE will be back on Friday to preview some of these matchups this weekend that we glanced over here today. Austin Owens will be joining me next to talk about the Premier Lacrosse League. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
You're watching Goal Line Extended, presented by Lacrosse Flash.
Welcome back to the show, Tuesday, April 6th. I hope you're all having a great day and enjoying the show. Jordan Johnson and I just ran through this weekend's slate of college lacrosse games, and GLE will be back on Friday to look ahead to next weekend, so make sure to keep an eye out for that. But joining me now to talk some Premier Lacrosse League is Lacrosse Flash Editor-in-Chief Austin Owens. Austin, what's going on, man? Welcome back to the show.
Ryan, my friend, how are we doing on this lovely day?
Doing great. Always here, Austin, but just behind the scenes for all of our productions, here to talk some PLL with me today. The plan was originally to have full coverage of the PLL college draft, which was originally scheduled for tonight, but my hard work as an insider paid off, even though it really wasn't that hard. The website just never made the change, but the league made the official announcement over the weekend that the college draft will, in fact, be be held on Monday, April 26th, as opposed to tonight. I heard it's scheduled for like 10 p.m. Eastern. That's only rumored, but I really hope that's not true, as that flirts with my bedtime. But Austin, following this entry draft and amidst the current waiver wire ahead of the college draft, which is now a few weeks away, the only team we haven't talked much about here on this show over the last week or so since the entry draft is the Chaos. Andy Towers' team remained quiet last week during the first round of the waiver period, but made 3 key additions back on the night of the entry draft in March. He snagged Max Adler 8th overall to be his face-off specialist of hopefully the future. Challen Rogers slipped to the end of the second round, and midfielder Kyle Jackson was taken with the last pick of the draft. Let's start with Adler. He is, as of right now, the only face-off man on this Chaos team. Expect to see Towers add another draw guy before the season. But Whipsnake's face-off specialist Joe Nardello talked very highly of Adler last week in my interview with him. He's a guy that Towers was very happy to see slip to the end of round 1, the Chaos being a team that struggled pretty mightily in the face-off department in 2020. They lose Tommy Kelly to the Cannons in expansion, possibly a blessing in disguise. What type of turnaround should we expect Adler to bring to this Chaos team going into 2021 at the face-off X?
Well, I don't think you could get much worse than the Chaos did last season, and that's saying with all due respect to Tommy Kelly. I know the underlying numbers really didn't do him any favors, but I mean, it is what it is. When I look at Chaos, Max Adler was the perfect fit for him. I think Mackie Jenner, she did a fantastic job scooping him up on our mock, and she was spot on with it. I mean, they really only had Austin Henningsen behind Tommy Kelly, and he wasn't a guy that was proven in the PLL so far. So, you got to go up and get your guy, and I think they did. I think from what I saw of him, he was really commanding. He was a captain with the Denver Outlaws during the MLL bubble, and he's just going to bring that leadership, and he's going to bring that ability. And I mean, Joe said everything you need to know about him. The guy's an absolute monster. He's one of the best face-off guys in the world that wasn't already in the PLL, excuse me. And I think he's just going to come in and be a fantastic addition. Obviously, Andy Towers, you see what that offense can do once they get regular touches in their end. And I think when you have a guy that's as dominant as Adler, he's going to go head-to-head with the top guys in the PLL, and he's going to be a big guy for Chaos this season.
Adler probably going to be one of the top face-off specialists in the league, as you're alluding to. Challen Rogers, a guy that you and Greggy like a whole lot, a former second overall pick to the NLL's Toronto Rock, and only the next Canadian added to this already Canadian-heavy Chaos offense. Another guy that you can probably say slipped to Andy Towers at the end of round 2. What type of impact do you foresee him making on this Chaos midfield and in this Chaos offense?
I was joking when I was on last time when I said the Chaos were going to add every Canadian imaginable. But I'm not surprised, nor am I upset. I am very happy watching Chaos go ahead and just swoop up and grab Challen Rogers. I believe it was 16th overall, was that?
Yeah, end of the second round.
It's pretty good, considering we had him at 4th overall in our mock.
We had him going forward to the Water Dogs, yeah.
Greggy and I are very high on him. Greggy's a big D guy, big defense guy. I am as well. Challen Rogers, we talk about him, and he's a unicorn, and that's the best way I can explain him in as few words as possible, honestly. He's 6'4", probably close to 220 pounds. He runs as fast as I've ever seen. When he plays for the Toronto Rock, the guy literally never comes off the floor. He plays offense, defense. He plays power play for them. He does so much, and I know Kyle was on here last week talking about Brian Cole and what a big pickup he'll be for the Whipsnakes. Challen Rogers is going to have that same impact, I think, when it comes to Chaos. He can run both sides. I think he's an underrated scorer because he's so known for his defensive ability, but he's obviously a big transition threat in the box game. And just that size and that ability, he's probably got one of the heaviest shots I have ever seen. Not necessarily a guy that's going to shoot it a lot. He likes to sort of set up plays and get in tight. He can swim a lot. He can get to the cage. But when he wants to let it go from up top, he absolutely stings it. So I think he's going to be a guy that Andy Towers absolutely loves. I think you put him in that midfield core with Salcido and Jake Ficaro, and if you let him shoot from 2-point range, he might be the new member of the bomb squad, honestly.
There we go, possibly adding members to the Chaos Bomb Squad. Kyle Jackson, he's another quote-unquote Canadian. He's an Ontario native and a member of the Aamjiwnaun First Nation in Ontario. He's played internationally with the Iroquois Nationals, and he tallied 88 goals during his time with Michigan that ended in 2016. Jackson was selected 5 picks after Rogers in the first round of the 2016 NLL entry draft. Towers was able to grab him with the final pick of the 2021 PLL entry draft. More Canadian influence being added to what people are already calling calling and have been calling the PLO's Team Canada when referring to the Chaos. How does the addition of Jackson further cement that Canadian influence on offense going forward?
I think Kyle Jackson's performance at the latest World Indoor Games sort of shows you what you can expect from him. He's a very slippery individual. He's sort of got a smaller frame and is a little bit more slight, but he can just contort his body and make people miss and do all these things that I can't say a lot of players can do. I think he was a big piece in Coach Quirk's Cannons team last year on the way to the MLL championship. I don't really know. I think he's more of a complimentary piece, and that's no disrespect to Kyle Jackson. That's just how good the Chaos unit is right now with Fricaro, Salcido. You have Ian McKay, who's just come in. You've got Challen Rogers, who we just talked about. And Jackson's going to be he can be sort of, I talked about this Josh Courier role because he was sort of the standout when it came to this, of being that guy who can sort of be an attack midfield hybrid. And I think he'll fit in perfectly with that with the Chaos offense. I just think when it comes to him, you put him in different scenarios as a lefty, and he's lefty dominant. You put him in the two-man game with Josh Byrne, I think he'd be fantastic. I think you could run him off a number of sets. He would be incredible coming out of the box. He's going to be very good. He's just shifty, and he is a special player. I think when you look at him, he had a bit of a down season last year for Halifax, and that's sort of the last time before the MLL bubble that we got to see him in a full slate. But that's also because he had to play with Cody Jamieson and he had to play with Ryan Benesh with the Thunderbirds. Two pretty good players, I would say. So he didn't get as many touches as I'm sure he'd like. But in the field game, I mean, this play speaks for himself. I mean, he's a U Michigan product. He's done everything there is to do. He won an MLL championship. Now he's got to win a PLL championship, and he's going to a team that was right on the door last season. So I'm interested to see how Coach Towers sort of employs him in this unit. I think him on the left side with Byrne and Austin Stotts is really exciting, though.
Now, Andy Towers has not made any additions yet through the PLO waivers. Remember, before the entry draft, he added attackman Chase Frazier and former NFL running back Dalton Croson to the roster. Both had already been in the PLO player pool, but his team now sits at 25 players, fact-checked by the PLO's Joe Keegan, and he holds 6 college draft picks for April 26th, the notable ones being the 6th overall pick of the first round and then back-to-back picks at 14 and 15. Some were wondering why he didn't make any moves during that first round of the waivers. Also, keep in mind, we should be hearing soon from both defenseman Matt Reese and Johnny Surdick, who are both currently on that military list. Reese played in Utah in 2020, but Surdick did not. We are currently unsure of their availability for this summer, but Towers still sitting tight, looks to be waiting out this process. And again, he has 6 picks in a 4-round draft and would exceed that mark of 30 players if he uses all those picks and keeps his current roster through the end of April. So we will wait to see what Coach Towers does over the next few weeks. And that brings me actually to my question here, because all the teams in the league are under 30 players. The Cannon's the only exception. Coach Quirk is at 30 right now. But the other 7 teams are hovering around that 25, 26, 27 roster number right now. The defending champion Whipsnakes have the smallest roster at 24 after adding midfielder Frank Brown yesterday. With all that talent still out there ahead of the college draft later this month, why do you think all these teams aren't maxing out their rosters like we saw Coach Quirk do?
I think it's one of those things where the waiver wire is probably going to play a bigger role, or at least a bigger role than it has up to now in the lead up to the season after the draft is done. I'm not sure when the waiver wire closes following the college draft.
April 30th.
April 30th. Okay. So I remember, so you've got probably a 3 or 4 day window following the draft, 3-day window, excuse me. Yeah. Sorry. Not a math guy. Yeah, you've got that window, and I seem to remember last year there was a lot of guys that got signed after that draft. There was your Eli Salamas for the Chrome. There was Jake Withers for the Water Dogs, guys that really came in and were productive pieces for their teams. So I think when I look at the original thing, we were obviously waiting around. I think we filmed the day that the original waiver wire was supposed to happen, and we were going, what's going on with Chaos? What are they doing? Like, we talk about Canadians on that team. This Team Canada. You've got Mark Matthews, Kevin Crowley out there, like. You're just going to let them sit, Coach Towers? And I didn't realize that they have 6 picks in this draft. I don't know where they came from. I'm assuming the Salcido Jones trade was one of them. Mm-hmm. But hey, more power to Coach Towers. I mean, my goodness, like, they're going to add so much talent through that draft. And I'm just talking about Chaos for now. So we'll get to the other teams in a sec, but they're going to have to get down to that 30 range. When it comes to Chaos, they're going to be one over with all their picks. So do you trade away a pick, gain more capital for next season? Do you do something where you trade away? I know Miles Thompson's been a guy that's been sort of talked about in rumors the last little while for obvious reasons. Chase Frazier and Dalton Croson, I'm not sure what their plans are for them. We'll see. I'm assuming they're training camp bodies for now. But when it comes to all those teams, I feel like they're going to feel out what they can get in the college draft, and there's certainly a number of guys that each team can add. But at the same time, then you also have that waiver period afterwards where you can sort of figure out what you want your roster to look like near that end of the season. So it'll be interesting to watch what the teams are doing. The Whip Snakes are just ridiculous. I don't understand. I think I posted the "you can't keep doing this" from Breaking Bad about Jim Stagnita. Like, it's an absolute joke that they got Matt Abbott and Brian Cole, and they got Kevin Reisman, and they just got Frank Brown, who I'm assuming is going to probably play like a D-midi sort of role for them. They're just adding talent, all these teams, and it's exciting to sort of see that like every player didn't quite end up where we thought they would be. I sort of had players penciled into certain teams, and all of them are wrong. And I love that sort of chaotic nature of the PLL, that like, because you're a Canadian guy, you're not penciled in to say the Water Dogs or the Chaos because they're more like the Canadian MO teams, or the Whip Snakes going out and grabbing a guy like Kevin Reisman, even though they have Joe Nardella. Like, it's kind of fun just to see how all these sort of shake out and see what those battles will be in camp. So I'll be watching the college draft, obviously, but I'll be watching the waiver wire just as closely in the next few days after that.
We should see a few of these teams add, really, as you were saying, you brought up Reisman, just kind of those backup roles. There's a handful of teams that only have one faceoff guy, and the Whip Snakes only have one goalie. So we will wait and see whether or not the other 7 head coaches continue to make additions ahead of the college draft. Obviously, Coach Quirk already being at that number 30. At that magic number of 30 players. Jim Stagnita and Tim Student, as you brought up before, got the ball rolling yesterday being Monday. Stagnita added midfielder Frank Brown to his team, a former Boston Cannon and a member of the Buffalo Bandits, and Student added short stick defensive midi Michael Brown and goalie Tate Boyce off the player pool to compete in camp. Chrome now sits at 28 players with 4 draft picks, the notable one being the 3rd overall pick of the draft. But I'm looking at a few of these teams and the possible holes that these head coaches might want to address before the college draft. As I'm saying, face-off and goalie being the notable ones. The Chaos still with just one face-off man. Tim Sudan, Chris Bates with the Archers, Ben Rubier and Atlas, and Andy Copeland and the Water Dogs in the same boat with one draw guy. Bates in a little more of what you could call panic mode, given that those other 4 head coaches seem to have found their answer at face-off. And 4 of these teams, if they wanted to, could be in the TD Erlin sweepstakes. The Atlas at 1, Water Dogs at 2, Chrome at 3, and the Archers at 5. And again, Towers with 6 picks at number 6 could make a move up if he chooses. You just brought up before making a possible trade. Same applies for the Archers at 5, but these 5 teams could be looking for another draw guy ahead of the college draft. They could find that guy here in the waiver wire or after the college draft in the waiver wire. Jim Stagnito only has one goalie. He could have his eyes on a possible backup for Kyle Bernlohr after losing Jake Stover. So with 3 weeks until the college draft, we could very well see some more additions as well as cuts. We saw Davey Amala, veteran Mike Simon released by the Archers. So these head coaches are staying active. Hopefully it remains that way through this month of April. But Frank Brown picked up by the defending champs. You brought up that he should play in more of a short stick defensive midi role. What should he add to this Whipsnakes midfield? As we said, Chris Aslanian, Brian Cole, Matt Abbott already added. What should he bring to this team?
I think when you look at, say, a Brian Cole or a Matt Abbott, I think what they do is they bring that two-way ability. Matt Abbott's listed as a short stick D midi, but obviously he can bring some punch at the offensive end. Frank Brown can do that as well, but I think more so, I think it's sort of what Chris Bates talked about when he was talking about adding through the draft, size and also just strength, ability, stuff like that. Frank Brown is, I think, 6'4". Like he's a big body back there. I believe he's a Hobart guy as well. I'm sorry, I'm sort of blanking on where he went to school, but just through the indoor game, he's sort of been one of those guys that is very talented, but he's been exposed to expansion a couple of times and moved around a bit. So we haven't quite gotten to see him sort of in a role that we thought we would just yet, but he'll get there at some point. But he's been that transition guy. He starts out of the back door in the NLL and is able to bring the ball up and provide some punch sometimes, but more so just get the ball over the midline and then get it to the offense in order to set up. And that's not exactly the most glamorous job in the world. That's not what everybody sort of sets out to be, but that's an important role in lacrosse, no matter what sport or what variant you play, field or box. And I think that's what Frank Brown's going to be. And I think he's going to buy into Jim Stagnita's sort of philosophy of just everybody buying in and being able to just do what the Whipsnakes do. And that's, they love to score ones. They make that a big thing. They're just solid at the defensive end. Like you get on, get off, job's done. That's it. There's no screwing around at the back end with that team. And I think Frank is a big body. I think you put him with Matt Abbott, you put him with Charlie Hayes, who I know David talked about as being a very mean individual who is not very fun to play against. So I think Frank will be a very interesting guy to watch. See what his role sort of is. I know he played a bit of a different role at Hobart, so we'll see what he becomes. And I'm just sort of I'm seeing it as we're recording, so I'm just sort of compartmentalizing what it means for the team. But it's another good player, and that's all you want in this is guys that are willing to buy into your philosophy and your system, and guys that'll fit in with the rest of the guys in the room. And I think that's what Frank will do.
Hit singles, play good defense, and win championships. That is what the Whipsnakes do. Again, we will wait and see how these head coaches round out their rosters ahead of the college draft. Sean Quirk, again, already at that magic number of 30 with 2 college draft picks. And it looks like every team will go over that magic number of 30 during the college draft, except for the Archers, Water Dogs, and Whipsnakes. Each of them should be at or below 30 if they keep their current college draft picks, use them, and make no more additions between now and April 26th. But as we're saying, we want to see more waiver wire pickups, some stuff to talk about here on Goal Line Extended. Austin, thank you for hopping on and talking some Premier Lacrosse League with me. If anything happens between now and like Thursday evening in the PLL, you know we'll be back here on Friday to talk about all of it. Don't go anywhere. Archers defenseman Eli Gobrecht will be joining you next. Welcome back to the show, Tuesday, April 6th. My name is Ryan Hulsebos, and you are watching or listening to our 5th show of Goal Line Extended, a new show out of the Lacrosse Flash podcast network. We are glad that you are here and hopefully enjoying the show. If you are not already, make sure to subscribe to Goal Line Extended on YouTube to watch our full broadcasted show, and then head on over to Lacrosse Flash and subscribe there as well, as we'll have segments cut out from the show individually available for your viewing. Also, make sure to check out lacrosseflash.com and all the awesome content our crew is putting together over there. Joining me now is one of Ithaca College's finest, the 2016 Empire 8 Player of the Year and the Division III Most Outstanding Defensive Player, as well as an MLO champion with the Denver Outlaws in 2018. He is now a member of, in my opinion, one of the top defensive units in the PLO, if they weren't in that conversation already. Joining me now, Archers and San Diego Seals defenseman Eli Gobrecht. Eli, what's going on, my guy?
Hey, Ryan, thanks for the intro. I really pumping my tires there, so I appreciate that. But yeah, happy to be on. As you can see, I'm in sunny San Diego right now, so life is good, man. I'm excited for the season, excited to be on here.
Absolutely. Your backdrop looks incredible right now. I was in Key West a few weeks ago. I was in Georgia last week, and then I was in Myrtle Beach this past weekend. Little hectic month we've had here, but I've been in these nice, you got this nice backdrop. I've been seeing a lot of that. And I'm glad that you got this nice life you got living here, that you got going on.
Yeah, I was debating whether I should take the call inside or not, but any chance you get to show off the palm trees back there, you got to do it.
If I had this backdrop right now, I'd be showing that off. The Ithaca Bombers, you guys sit at 2-1 right now on the season after playing all 3 of those games in like a week span there in the middle of March. Last 2 games with RIT and Union postponed, but it looks like we're set to go with Cortland on Wednesday. Have you been able to tune into any Bombers lacrosse so far this season? If so, from what you've seen, what have you liked?
Yeah, I got to watch a little bit of the Geneseo game a couple weeks back. Yeah, it's good to see them playing again. I mean, it's just been so long since I've been able to watch them play. Like all the other college teams, Division I especially, it's been incredible to watch. But, you know, they look pretty good. Like they had a tough game against St. John Fisher last week. And St. John Fisher is one of the best teams in the country now. Actually, one of the kids I used to coach, Nick Miller, I got to give him a shout out from Ithaca High School, is now the all-time leading scorer there. But I think Ithaca has looked decent at times. The offense is something they kind of had going. There's who had like 4 goals in a row in the game I was watching, so that was pretty cool to see. But just great to see the boys and the girls team back out there playing again.
Ithaca hopefully set to continue with their season after that brief pause. They have Cortland on Wednesday, Clarkson on Saturday in their first conference game of the season, and Skidmore, St. Lawrence, and Vassar, all conference opponents to close out the season. Eli, you know a lot more about those teams and these matchups than I do. Based on that schedule, how do you see Ithaca finishing out this season ahead of conference championships and then looking ahead to a D3 championship run?
Yeah, I mean, that Cortland game is always the one that's probably circled on the calendar first. Like, that's our biggest rival. And, from my experience playing there, the first 3 years we played, those games went to double overtime. We lost, overtime lost, double overtime lost again, and finally beat them our senior year. So that's kind of a game where you're going to have butterflies the whole day going into it, regardless of the records of each team. So I think that's kind of a huge one that can set the tone for them moving forward and hopefully give them some confidence heading into that matchup with Clarkson and then into the Liberty League playoffs. Like you said, RIT looks like an absolute wagon this year. So that's going to be hard for anybody to beat. But, last time they beat him was 2016 when I was there. Hopefully they can make that magic happen again.
Hey, we will hope for it. We are now Ithaca Bombers backers here. Eli Gobrecht
Yes.
joining us. Your head coach, Archer's head coach, Chris Bates, adding a lot of talented players here ahead of the 2021 season. Obviously, a lot of talented players were available for the taking, especially with that second overall pick of the entry draft. But as we've heard, it's more than just talent. It's about fitting into the culture, the game plan, the locker room. All that plays a part in it. Connor Fields is one of those talented players that Coach Bates acquired before the entry draft. He sent Ian McKay to the Chaos for him. Fields being a guy you're pretty familiar with, a guy you've played with during your time with the Seals. What does he bring to this Archers locker room, and what are you most excited for when it comes to playing and competing alongside him?
Well, I think, first of all, Fieldsy is just a really, really serious competitor. I think he's got to have a chip on his shoulder kind of coming off having a bit of a down year last year with the Chaos. But, I know how talented he is. I've seen him play on my team with the Seals, which is great because, he's an incredible shooter, a great feeder, and I think he's primed to have an awesome season in our offense, especially whenever you get a chance to play with Tom Schreiber. I think that he just makes everyone around him better. I think Connor's going to really thrive in our system this year.
Chris Bates adding yet another weapon to this Archers offense. Fields now joining Will Manny, Marcus Holman, and Grant Amen at attack. As you say, Tom Schreiber, Ryan Ambler, Christian Mazzone, and Joey Sankey in that midfield, along with entry draft additions Nate Solomon and Ryan McNamara to that offense. Coach Bates also made a point of addressing that already really good defense that you guys had in 2020. Graham Hossack taken with the second overall pick of the entry draft, Warren Jeffrey taken in the third round, and Latrell Harris, a guy that can really do a lot of different things and play in various roles. He's added through the waivers. It seems like from the outside looking in that these three guys are going to come in and make a big impact immediately for you guys on the defensive end. How do you see that playing out, and what are you looking forward to most in welcoming them to this team, this locker room, kind of this championship culture and mindset that you're trying to build here?
Yeah, I remember just talking to Matt McMahon after our entry draft, and we were both pretty pumped because, just felt like we could use a little bit more size, like I'm sure Coach Bates mentioned multiple times, size and strength. And I'm not sure there's anyone in the league that's as strong as Graham Hossack. Like, he's an absolute beast. They call him a cyborg for a reason. I think I posted a clip after we drafted him of him just running me over when we played Halifax this year in San Diego. So he's going to be a great addition to our team. I think he's got to be in the conversation as, one of the best defensemen in the world. So I'm excited to play with him. And the Moose, we have two Mooses on the team now with Mark McNeil and Warren Jeffrey, but I've played against Warren in MLL with Chesapeake. He did a really good job in that championship game 2019 guarding junior. And I played against him in indoor too. Have a couple mutual friends. Like Ian McKay went to Vermont with him, and Coach Cab, I know, coached him there. So they speak really highly of him, and I'm excited to see what he can do. And as you mentioned, Latrell Harris too. I've been kind of a fan of his game from afar. I know that he joined the NLL basically as an 18-year-old, which is almost unheard of. Like, I didn't play my first NLL game till I was, I think, 26. So I think he is really versatile. He can play LSM. He can play short stick. He can play pussy if he needs to. So I just feel like we added a ton of talent, and our defense got a lot better through these drafts and waiver pickups.
It's crazy. We're over here imagining a defense with some kind of combination of yourself, Graham Hossack, Matt McMahon, and Warren Jeffrey. Scott Ratliff running at LSM, Dominique Alexander, McNeil, Latrell Harris at short stick defense. Harris, as you're saying, can pick up a pull. The possibilities seem endless, and we haven't even gone into the man-down combinations that we could see Chris Bates and Tony Rush throw out there, utilizing all the different strengths of this defensive group. It's incredible. And what's even better, for us at least, is that this situation is pretty much the same for all the other 7 teams. We'll be lucky to watch all of that go down this summer. Lucky for you, you get to compete against those other 7 teams and alongside this Archers group. Your team added all this new talent, but it does come at an expense, as we kind of all expected it to. LSM Mike Simon released to the player pool by your team during the middle of last week, a guy that has won championships at the professional level. In my conversations with Chris Bates ahead of last year's championship series, Simon was a guy that he held in very high regard. You add all this talent, but again, it comes at a price. What will you miss most about being around Mike, what he does on the field, that veteran leadership that he brings to the locker room, and what's the plan, hopefully, in replacing his loss?
Yeah, I mean, I played with Tree my rookie year back in 2018 with the Outlaws, and him being another D3 guy, like he really took me under his wing, and it was pretty special to win a championship with him back in 2018. So when I found out we were going to be teammates again with the Archers, I was excited. But he's just like sort of a glue guy that is a huge part of our locker room. Like whether it's because he's the center of attention, his guys are kind of ripping on him a little bit, or he's making some points. Like the guy's won 6 MLL championships, so he's got a championship pedigree, and he's a guy that's great to have in your locker room and kind of brings your team together. So definitely going to miss that aspect, and hopefully we'll get another D3 guy in there that can be my buddy.
There we go. The 2021 NLL season was set to start this weekend, obviously has since been called off and pushed back to a December start date amid the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. We should then have a full 2021-2022 NLL season. Disappointing that you couldn't be playing this weekend, but looking ahead to December, we don't want to look too far ahead and then have this summer fly by too fast, but getting back to playing in the NLL, hopefully by that point, fans in the stands as normal. And we're, hopefully going to be able to freely cross that U.S.-Canada border, kind of the issues that they were having in making the season happen now. But what are you most excited about in terms of getting back out on the floor for the Seals?
Yeah, I mean, we were really rolling at the end of the pandemic year. We'd won 5 out of our last 6, and we got Austin Stotts back from injury. We were kind of starting to click defensively and offensively. So I'm just excited to get back with this group. I mean, just the fact that I get to play with a guy like Brody Merrill as my captain, you kind of just feel fearless on the floor when you have that guy behind you. And I think some of these rookies that we've drafted hopefully can come in and contribute right away. But yeah, I'm just excited for a full season. I've never had a full season in the NLL, and I'm planning on being in market down in San Diego. I've got a lot closer, with some of my teammates. Been living with Westberg for the past couple months down here, and with Moose Winery, our goalie. So, I think we have a pretty awesome group here, and I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to live in San Diego. So, just moving forward, looking at the roster, I think it's going to be an awesome year. And like you said, don't want to look too far ahead because I'm mainly focused on this summer, but I'm sure the winter will be here before you know it. So I can't wait to get going again with these guys.
Eli, I want to thank you so much for joining us, my man. Looking ahead to the 2021 season, what are you most excited for?
I'm just excited for training camp. I want to, see all these new faces and have a full season with these guys. It was a great experience going to the bubble, and I think it brought us a lot closer. But, I don't think anybody envisioned or wanted to play a 6-game season in the end. So getting that full slate of games and making a run at a championship with this group is just, I can't wait for it.
Oh, yeah, chasing championships is what we do. We're going to have to stop the Whip Snakes, the Cannons as well, defending champions.
Yeah.
All right, you got 2 teams that are going for defensive or trying to defend the title. So we'll see if your team can do it. Eli, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. For everyone watching and listening, make sure to hit up Eli on Instagram and Twitter at Gobi Desert. Take it easy, my man. Hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Take it easy, brother. Appreciate it.
All right, everyone, that is going to do it for our 5th show here of Goal Line Extended. I want to thank you all for watching and or listening. If you are not already, make sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube as well as on whatever podcast platform that you use. Search up Goal Line Extended, and you should be able to find it. You can also follow Goal Line Extended on Instagram and Twitter at GL Extended. All of the links that you will need will be in the description of the video or podcast that you are viewing or listening to. We will be back on Friday to look ahead to the weekend slate of games and whatever else goes down in the world of lacrosse. So make sure to follow and subscribe so that you don't miss the show. I hope you all have an incredible week, and we will see you on Friday.
Follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at GL Extended and subscribe to the show on any of your favorite podcast outlets. You can find Lacrosse Flash on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and online at lacrosseflash.com.